I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd cut off their family. Growing up, my parents drilled the importance of family first into my head. They were immigrants who left everything behind to give my sister Emma and me a better life in America. The sacrifices they made, working multiple jobs, living in a tiny apartment for years, were always at the forefront of their stories. How could I ever turn my back on people who had given up so much for me? But life has a strange way of testing the beliefs you've held closest. The dinner that changed everything started like any other monthly family get-together. Mom had prepared her special lasagna. Dad had opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving, and Emma was late as usual. I'd arrived early to help set the table, a habit I couldn't shake despite working 60-hour weeks managing an increasingly demanding software development team. "Jasmine, honey, could you check if I left the garlic bread in the oven?" Mom called. From the living room, where she was straightening family photos, always making sure everything looked perfect before Emma arrived. I opened the oven and was hit with the aroma of butter and garlic. "2 more minutes, Mom," I called back, grabbing oven mitts from the drawer. This kitchen was as familiar to me as my own apartment, more familiar in some ways. I'd been paying the mortgage on this house for the past 3 years, ever since Dad's construction company went under and Mom's part-time receptionist job couldn't cover their expenses. "Is that my favorite bread I smell?" Dad appeared in the doorway, his smile warm, but the worry lines around his eyes deeper than they'd been a month ago. "You know Mom wouldn't let us have a family dinner without it." I smiled back, trying to ignore the nagging feeling that had been growing inside me lately. 3 years of monthly transfers to my parents' account. 3 years of tightening my own budget, delaying my plans to buy my own place. I'd never hesitated. They needed help, and I was in a position to give it. That's what family does. The sound of the front door opening announced Emma's arrival. My younger sister's voice filled the house. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare, and then I had to stop for wine because I knew we'd need an extra bottle." Dad hurried to greet her, his voice brightening several notches. "There's my girl. We were just about to start without you." I removed the perfectly browned garlic bread from the oven and placed it in the basket I'd bought for Mom's birthday last year. By the time I carried it to the dining room, Emma was already seated in her usual spot, regaling our parents with a story about her latest photography gig. "And the client loved the shot so much they've booked me for their daughter's wedding in June. In the Hamptons." Emma flipped her hair over her shoulder, her enthusiasm infectious. Mom clasped her hands together. "Oh, that's wonderful, sweetheart. Your career is really taking off." It was taking off, and I was genuinely happy for her. Emma had always been the artistic one, following her passion for photography despite our parents' initial concerns about financial stability. Now, at 28, she was building a name for herself in wedding and event photography. Her schedule was erratic, her income unpredictable, but she was doing what she loved. "The lasagna looks amazing, Mom." I placed the bread basket on the table and took my seat. "Jasmine, there you are." Emma smiled at me as though she'd just noticed my presence. "How's the corporate world treating you? Still working yourself to death for that promotion?" "The team's delivering a major project next month," I said, serving myself a portion of salad. "It's intense, but we're on track." "Always the responsible one," Emma teased. But there was something in her tone that made me pause, a hint of, was that resentment? Dad cleared his throat. "Speaking of responsible, your mother and I have something we'd like to discuss with both of you." The atmosphere in the room shifted. Mom suddenly became very interested in adjusting her napkin, and Dad swirled his wine with unusual focus. "We've been thinking about the future," he continued, "and we've made some decisions about our will and what happens to the house." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. This was unexpected. At 65, my parents were active and healthy. We hadn't had any end-of-life discussions yet. "Dad, is everything okay, health-wise?" I asked, my mind immediately jumping to worst-case scenarios. Everything's fine, honey. Mom reached over to pat my hand. We just think it's wise to have everything in order. You know how your father is about planning. Dad nodded. Exactly. And after a lot of discussion, we've decided that the house will go to Emma when the time comes. The words hung in the air for a moment before their meaning fully registered. The house whose mortgage I had been paying for 3 years, would go to Emma. Not to both of us, not to me, to Emma. I don't understand, I said carefully, setting down my fork. It's simple, really, Dad continued, his voice taking on the reasonable tone he used when explaining something he thought should be obvious. Emma's career is less stable than yours. She'll need the security of having a place to live more than you will. Emma looked down at her plate, but not before I caught the small, satisfied smile that flickered across her face. You've always been the financially responsible one, Jasmine, Mom added. You've got that wonderful job with benefits and retirement plans. Emma doesn't have that kind of safety net. The lasagna that had smelled so appetizing moments ago now turned my stomach. I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years, I said, my voice quiet but steady. 3 years, $42,000. A moment of uncomfortable silence fell over the table. And we're so grateful for that help, honey, Mom said quickly. You have no idea how much that's meant to us. We couldn't have kept the house without you, Dad agreed, nodding earnestly. But this decision isn't about the past. It's about the future and who will need the support more. I looked at Emma, who was still studying her untouched lasagna with unusual interest. Did you know about this? She glanced up, her expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. They told me they were thinking about it last week. I told them they should talk to you directly. Last week? The betrayal cut deeper. They'd been discussing this for some time, all while accepting my money. And in these discussions, did it ever come up that I've been paying to keep this roof over all of our heads while you've been building your business? Now, Jasmine, Dad's voice took on a warning tone, there's no need to be hostile. We appreciate everything you've done, but Emma has needs too. What about my needs? The words escaped before I could stop them. What about my need to buy my own home someday? The down payment I've been putting off to help you? The retirement savings I've reduced? You'll be fine, Mom said dismissively. You always land on your feet. You're the strong one. And there it was, the family narrative that had shaped our entire lives. Jasmine is the strong one, the responsible one, the one who can handle anything. Emma needs more support, more encouragement, more resources. Jasmine will understand. Jasmine will sacrifice. I think I need some air. I pushed back from the table and stood up, my dinner untouched. Don't be dramatic, honey, Mom said. Come sit back down. We're having a family discussion. No, I said, surprised by the calmness in my voice despite the storm raging inside me. I think I'm done with family discussions for tonight. I walked out to the back porch, the cool evening air providing little relief from the heat of hurt and anger coursing through me. Behind me, I could hear hushed voices. Dad's gruff concern, Mom's annoyed dismissal, Emma's defensive murmurs. The wooden porch swing, the one I'd helped Dad hang when I was 14, creaked as I sat down. This house held so many memories, birthdays, holidays, movie nights, the corner of the living room where I'd studied for my SATs, the kitchen table where I'd signed my first job offer letter, the backyard where Emma and I had played endless games of make-believe. And now it would all go to Emma because she needed it more. Because I was the strong one. The back door opened and closed softly. Emma sat down beside me on the swing, her shoulder not quite touching mine. I didn't ask for this, she said after a long silence. But you're not refusing it either, I replied. Staring out at the darkening yard, Emma sighed. What do you want me to do, Jazz? Tell them to change their will? They've made up their minds. Did you ever once, in all those discussions, mention that I've been paying the mortgage? That without me, they might have lost this house years ago? She shifted uncomfortably. I may have brought up that you're doing really well financially, that you're probably going to get that promotion soon. The betrayal cut deeper. So you actively advocated for yourself. I was just being honest. You are doing well. You're going to be some big executive someday with stock options and bonuses. I'm always going to be hustling for the next gig. And that's my fault? That I chose a stable career while you followed your passion? Emma threw up her hands. See, this is why I hate talking about money with you. You always make me feel like I made the wrong choice, like I'm irresponsible because I didn't want to sit in a cubicle for 40 years. I have never said that. I protested, but even as the words left my mouth, I wondered if my actions had somehow conveyed that message. Had I been subtly judging her all these years while believing I was being supportive? You didn't have to say it. Emma stood up. The swing rocking with her sudden movement. It's in every emergency loan you've given me, every time you've helped me with rent. You're so perfect, Jasmine, so responsible, such a good daughter. The bitterness in her voice shocked me. Is that what this is about? You resent me for helping. You? I resent you for making it look so easy. Emma's voice cracked. For always being the one Mom and Dad brag about to their friends. Jasmine got another promotion. Jasmine's team won an industry award. Jasmine. Do you have any idea what it's like being your sister? I stared at her, speechless. All these years I'd thought I was doing the right thing. Working hard, helping my family, supporting my sister's dreams. And all along, my success had been a burden to her. I never meant to make you feel that way, I said finally. Emma's shoulders slumped. I know. That almost makes it worse. You're not even trying to be perfect. You just are. She turned toward the door. Look, I'm sorry about the house, really, but I'm not going to tell them to change their will. For once in my life, I'm going to be the one they take care of. She went back inside, leaving me alone with the weight of realizations too heavy to carry. The family dynamic I'd accepted as normal my entire life suddenly seemed toxic, twisted. I wasn't the responsible daughter. I was the reliable ATM, the workhorse, the one they could always count on to pick up the slack, and I was done. The decision crystallized in that moment, clear and sharp as glass. I would no longer be the family safety net, no more mortgage payments, no more emergency loans. No more sacrificing my future for people who saw my success as an excuse to take more. When I walked back into the dining room, they all looked up. Mom and Dad with irritation, Emma with wary defiance. I've made a decision, I announced, my voice steadier than I expected. I won't be paying the mortgage anymore. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. What are you talking about? You've made it clear that my financial contributions to this family don't merit consideration in your estate planning. So I'm stopping those contributions, effective immediately. Jasmine, you're overreacting, Mom said, her tone painfully condescending. Just because we're leaving the house to Emma doesn't mean we don't appreciate... I'm not finished, I interrupted, surprising all of us. I never interrupted my mother. I've spent 3 years putting your needs ahead of my own. I've delayed buying my own home. I've reduced my retirement contributions. I've canceled vacations, all to help keep this house in the family. A house that, it turns out, was never meant for me. Now, listen here, young lady. Dad started, his face reddening. No, you listen, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I've been listening my whole life. I've been the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who sacrifices. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being taken for granted. I'm tired of being expected to give and give and give with nothing in return but a pat on the head and you'll be fine. So this is about money? Mom's eyes narrowed. After everything we've done for you, you're putting a price tag on family? The hypocrisy was breathtaking. No, Mom, You did that when you accepted my money for 3 years while planning to exclude me from your will. We raised you, Dad said, his voice dangerously low. We put you through college. We supported you your entire life, and this is how you repay us? With threats and tantrums? I paid for my own college with scholarships and student loans, I corrected him. Loans I just finished paying off last year while still sending you money every month. Emma was looking increasingly uncomfortable, shifting in her chair and avoiding eye contact with anyone. And I'm not threatening anyone, I continued. I'm simply informing you of my decision. Your mortgage payment is due on the 1st. You have 10 days to figure out how you're going to pay it because it won't be coming from my account anymore. You would let us lose our home. Mom's voice trembled, tears welling in her eyes, tears I'd seen deployed strategically many times before. After everything we've sacrificed for you? The guilt rose, automatic and suffocating, but I pushed it down. You won't lose your home if you prioritize the mortgage over other expenses. Dad's Social Security and your part-time job should cover it if you budget carefully. Emma might need to contribute too, now that her career is taking off. This is ridiculous. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You can't just abandon your family because you're jealous of your sister. This isn't about jealousy, I said, though a small voice inside me wondered if that was partly true. This is about respect and boundaries, and being taken for granted for the last time. I picked up my purse from the side table. I should go. I've lost my appetite. If you walk out that door, Jasmine, Dad said, his voice shaking with anger, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms when you come to your senses. I paused at the threshold and looked back at them, my mother dabbing at tears that hadn't fallen, my father red-faced with indignation, my sister staring at her plate. I won't be coming back until there's an acknowledgement of how I've been treated, and an apology, I said quietly. I love you all, but I need to love myself more right now. And with that, I walked out of my childhood home, climbed into my car, and drove away from the family that had shaped me, constrained me, and taken me for granted for 32 years. I didn't cry until I was safely back in my apartment door, locked behind me. Then the tears came in a flood, hot and bitter and cleansing all at once. I cried for the little girl who had always tried so hard to be good, to be responsible, to earn her parents' approval. I cried for the young woman who had postponed her own dreams to support her family. I cried for the adult who had just walked away from the only support system she'd ever known, flawed as it was. But beneath the grief, underneath the guilt and doubt, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Like putting down a heavy backpack I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. My phone buzzed repeatedly that night. Calls from Mom, texts from Dad, a single message from Emma that read only, "I'm sorry it came to this." I silenced them all. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The days that followed passed in a strange blur of emotion. Moments of fierce pride in my decision would give way to crushing doubt. Had I overreacted? Was I the villain in this story? Should I have kept paying, kept sacrificing, kept playing my assigned role in the family drama? But each time I felt myself weakening, I remembered that moment at the dinner table. The casual way they had announced that my financial support meant nothing when it came to their long-term plans. The entitled expectation that I would continue giving indefinitely without recognition or reciprocity. A week after the dinner, I sat down with my financial advisor to reassess my situation. Without the monthly drain of my parents' mortgage, my financial picture changed dramatically. You could have enough for a down payment on your own place within 6 months, Claire said, showing me the projections on her tablet. Sooner, if you get that promotion you're in line for. My own place. The dream I'd put on hold 3 years ago when Dad lost his business. It seemed suddenly, startlingly possible. And your retirement savings, Claire continued, swiping to another screen. If we increase your contributions to make up for the reduced amounts these past few years, you'll still be on track for your target retirement age. A future. My future. Not mortgaged to support my parents or to compete with the ghost of what Emma might need. Let's do it, I said, feeling a surge of empowerment. All of it. Claire looked up from her tablet, a smile spreading across her face. I've been waiting 3 years to hear you say that, Jasmine. It's about time you put yourself first. Was it really that simple? Had everyone in my life seen what I couldn't? That I was trapped in a pattern of self-sacrifice that benefited no one, least of all me. The mortgage due date came and went. My phone erupted with calls and texts. Mom alternating between guilt trips and tearful pleas. Dad swinging between angry demands and attempts at authoritative reason. I let them all go to voicemail, sending only a brief text to both. I meant what I said. My decision is final, Emma called once. They're freaking out, she said when I picked up, her voice tight with stress. Dad's talking about taking a night security job, and Mom's blaming me, saying if I'd refused the inheritance, you wouldn't have thrown a tantrum. It wasn't a tantrum, I said, keeping my voice level. It was a boundary. Whatever you want. To call it. They can't make the mortgage payment this month. They're talking about asking Uncle Rich for a loan. Uncle Rich, Dad's brother, who had warned him against overextending on the house in the first place. The irony wasn't lost on me. That sounds like a good solution, I said. A pause. You're really not going to help them? No, Emma, I'm not. They made their choice and I've made mine. So that's it? You're just done with the family? I sighed, feeling suddenly tired. I'm done being taken advantage of. There's a difference. They're calling you selfish, you know, Emma said, a note of accusation in her voice. Saying you've changed, that success has gone to your head. And what do you say? Another pause, longer this time. I say, maybe you have a point. But I also think you're punishing them for choosing me over you. I'm not punishing anyone, I said, though her words stung with their grain of truth. I'm protecting myself. And if you're honest, Emma, you know they've always chosen you. The house is just the latest example. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's not fair. None of this is. But it's reality. And I'm done pretending otherwise. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my apartment window, looking out at the city lights. 3 million people out there, each with their own family dramas, their own disappointments, their own difficult decisions. Were there others like me tonight, drawing boundaries where none had existed before? Standing their ground despite the hurricane of guilt and family expectations? I hoped so. I hoped I wasn't alone in this. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Mortgage is due. We need you to send the money now. I turned the phone face down on the counter without responding and took another sip of wine. This was the hardest part, the continuing expectation that I would cave, that my tantrum would subside, and I'd fall back into my familiar role. They still didn't understand that something fundamental had changed. I had changed. The following weekend, I did something I'd put off for over a year. I drove to a new housing development on the outskirts of the city and toured model homes. Not with any intention to buy, I wasn't ready for that commitment yet, but simply to allow myself to dream, to imagine what my own place might look like, what features would matter to me, what kind of space would feel like home. Are you looking for something for your family? The real estate agent asked as I admired the kitchen in a 3-bedroom townhouse. No, I said, surprised by how good it felt to say the next words. Just for me, she nodded approvingly. Smart. Buy for your current life, not the one you think you might have someday. So many people make that mistake. I thought about my parents. House. 4 bedrooms for a family of 4 that had dwindled to 2. A formal dining room used once a month at most. A yard that had become more burden than joy as my parents aged. Had they bought to fulfill a dream or to project an image? And Had I been enabling that unsustainable dream with my monthly payments? That night, I made another decision. I called my hairstylist and booked an appointment for the following day. "The usual trim?" Lena asked when I arrived at the salon. I shook my head, feeling a flutter of nervous excitement. "No, I want to change, something completely different." 2 hours later, I emerged with a sleek bob instead of the long waves I'd worn since college, with caramel highlights brightening my natural dark brown. The woman in the mirror looked confident, professional, and, most surprisingly, happy. "New haircut, new Jasmine?" my colleague Mike asked when I walked into the office on Monday. "Something like that," I smiled, settling at my desk with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. My team was entering the home stretch on our major project, and I'd been offered the weekend to rest before the final push. Instead, I'd come in early, determined to lead us to a flawless delivery. By the time Friday rolled around, we'd not only met our targets, but exceeded them, delivering a software solution that had our client raving and our CEO sending a company-wide email of congratulations. In the midst of all the chaos with my family, I'd somehow managed the most successful project launch of my career. "The VP of Product wants to see you," my boss Brian said, stopping by my desk late Friday afternoon. "Don't look so terrified. It's good news." The promotion I'd been working toward for the past 18 months was suddenly mine, along with a substantial raise and increased stock options. As the VP shook my hand and welcomed me to the leadership team, I felt a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. I wanted to share the news. It was the kind of moment you celebrate with loved ones. My finger hovered over my mom's contact information before I stopped myself. Not yet. The old Jasmine would have called immediately, seeking their approval, their pride. The new Jasmine needed to own this moment for herself first. Instead, I texted, "My friend Layla, promotion came through. Drinks tonight to celebrate?" 3 hours later, surrounded by friends at our favorite bar, I felt a sense of belonging that had nothing to do with family obligation and everything to do with genuine connection. These people chose to be in my life. They celebrated my successes without resentment, supported me through challenges without keeping score. To Jasmine, Layla raised her glass, who's finally learning that it's okay to put herself first sometimes. "Here's to boundaries," added our friend Thomas, clinking his glass against mine. "And new beginnings," I finished, taking a sip of champagne that tasted like possibility. Later that night, slightly tipsy and feeling brave, I finally checked the messages from my family that I'd been avoiding all day. There were fewer than I expected. The constant barrage had slowed to an occasional drip, a sign they were beginning to accept that my decision wasn't temporary. The last message, from my father sent earlier that evening, caught me by surprise. "Your mother and I have taken out a home equity loan to cover expenses while we figure things out. Emma is moving back home to help with bills. We're disappointed in your choices, but we'll manage without your money." No guilt trip, no demand. Just information with only a hint of the disappointment and judgment I'd come to expect. Was this progress? And Emma moving back home? That was unexpected. My sister had been fiercely independent since leaving for college, determined to make it on her own terms. What had changed? I nearly called her then, but stopped myself. This wasn't my problem to solve anymore. Whatever arrangements they made as a family moving forward, I had removed myself from that equation. It was a clean break, and I needed to honor it, at least for now. Instead, I sent a simple text to my father. "I'm glad you found a solution. Take care of each other." Then I silenced my phone, crawled into bed, and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The next morning, I woke to a text from Emma. "Can we meet for coffee? Just us." I hesitated. Was I ready to face any member of my family yet? But curiosity won out over caution, and I agreed to meet her at a cafe halfway between our apartments. She was already there when I arrived, 2 cups of coffee on the table. She'd remembered how I took mine, a small detail that touched me unexpectedly. Nice. Haircut, she said as I sat down. It suits you. Thanks. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. You wanted to talk? Emma nodded, a lock of her dark hair, so similar to mine before the highlights, falling across her face. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about always being chosen, about being the favorite. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine directly. You're right. I have been. The admission stunned me into silence. I never saw it clearly until this past month, she continued. Watching how they talk about you, how they expect so much but appreciate so little. Moving back home has been illuminating. Why did you move back? I asked, finding my voice. Partly to help with expenses, like Dad said, but also because I realized something. She took a deep breath. I've been just as bad as they have, taking your help, borrowing money, never really acknowledging what that meant for you. Emma? No. Let me finish. I've been jealous of you for so long, your stability, your success, the way you always seem to have everything figured out. It was easier to act like you had it easy than to admit you just worked harder, made different choices. I sipped my coffee, giving myself time to process her words. I've been jealous of you too, you know, I admitted finally. Your courage to follow your passion, to take risks. The way Mom and Dad always seemed to delight in you in a way they never did with me. Emma's eyes widened. Seriously? You were jealous of me? The way they look at you, like you're this magical creature who surprised and delighted them at every turn. I was only ever the reliable one, the one who met expectations rather than defied them. God, we're messed up, Emma laughed. But there was no humor in it, both envying what the other had, neither seeing the full picture. We sat in silence for a moment, the cafe buzzing around us. I'm not moving back in with them permanently, Emma said finally. Just until they get back on their feet. Dad's applied for some part-time work, and Mom's looking into increasing her hours at the doctor's office. That's good, I said, meaning it. They need to find solutions that don't involve depending on either of us. The house thing is still happening, Emma said, watching me carefully. They're not changing the will. I nodded, surprised by how little it hurt now. That's their choice. For what it's worth, I told them I think it should be split between us. They said they'd think about it, but you know how that goes. I do. I gave her a small smile. Thank you for trying, though. So what now? Emma asked, fiddling with her coffee cup. Are you really done with the family? I considered the question carefully. I'm done with the old patterns. The expectations, the one-sided giving, the assigned roles we've all played for so long. If there's going to be a relationship moving forward, it has to be different. Different how? Equal, respectful, with boundaries that everyone honors. I leaned forward. I love you, Emma. I love Mom and Dad. But I finally realized that I need to love myself enough to stop accepting scraps of appreciation in exchange for substantial sacrifice. Emma nodded slowly. I think I understand. And I think maybe I need to learn that lesson too, in my own way. We talked for another hour, more openly than we had in years, about our childhood, about our parents' expectations, about the sisterly competition that had been sometimes spoken, sometimes silent, but always present. Not everything was resolved. Decades of complex family dynamics couldn't be untangled in a single conversation, but it felt like a start. As we prepared to leave, Emma hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, she whispered, for standing up for yourself, for showing me it's possible. Thank you, I whispered back, surprised by the lump in my throat. That means more than you know. We parted with a promise to have dinner soon, just the two of us. No parents, no family drama, just sisters finding their way back to each other on new, more equal footing. That afternoon, I did something I'd been postponing for weeks. I cleared out my second bedroom, which had become a storage space for family memorabilia and items I'd held onto out of obligation rather than desire. Old school projects my mother couldn't bear to throw away, but had no room for in her overcrowded craft room. Photo albums I'd promised to digitize years ago. Holiday decorations from my childhood that I never actually displayed. It was time to reclaim this space, literally and figuratively. Some items went into donation boxes, others to storage, a few into the trash. By evening, the room was clear. The floors vacuumed, the walls ready for a fresh coat of paint. My home office, my yoga space, my reading nook, the possibilities stretched before me. This room, like my life, could become whatever I wanted it to be. As weeks turned into months, my new normal began to take shape. Without the financial drain of my parents' mortgage, I was able to increase my retirement contributions, start a dedicated house fund, and even take a vacation, a week in Costa Rica, where I tried surfing for the first time and spent lazy afternoons reading novels in a hammock by the beach. At work, my new position brought challenges and rewards in equal measure. I built a reputation as a fair but demanding leader, one who believed in work-life balance even as she pushed for excellence. The habits of responsibility and diligence that had been both blessing and curse in my family life served me well in my career. My relationship with my parents remained distant but not entirely severed. We exchanged occasional texts, brief updates about health and major life events. They sent a card for my birthday with a stiffly worded note. "We hope this year brings you perspective and a return to family values." I chose to focus on the fact that they'd remembered, rather than on the judgment embedded in their wishes. Emma and I grew closer, perhaps ironically, once I stopped feeling responsible for her financial well-being. Without money complicating our relationship, we found our way back to the friendship of our early childhood, before expectations and comparisons had driven a wedge between us. 6 months after the fateful dinner, I put an offer on a townhouse, smaller than my parents' home, but with large windows that filled the space with light, a modern kitchen where I could indulge my newfound interest in cooking, and a small garden where I planned to grow herbs and flowers. The day my offer was accepted, I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by paint samples and furniture catalogs, and felt a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to my eyes. Not just for the material security that allowed me to buy a home, but for the internal security I'd finally found. The knowledge that I was enough, just as I was, that I deserved good things, that my worth wasn't measured by what I could give to others, but by the life I created for myself. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. My mother's name flashed on the screen, a rare direct call rather than a text. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Hello? Jasmine." My mother's voice sounded older, more tentative than I remembered. "Emma told us your offer on the townhouse was accepted. Congratulations." "Thank you," I said, surprised by the gesture. "It's very exciting." "Your father and I were wondering." She paused, and I could picture her fiddling with the gold necklace she always wore when nervous. "We were wondering if you might want some help with moving, when the time comes." I didn't immediately answer, too shocked by the reversal of roles. My parents offering to help me, without being asked? "That would be nice," I said finally. "I'd appreciate the help." "Good." My mother cleared her throat. "And perhaps, once you're settled, we might come for dinner. All of us, as a family." The old Jasmine would have immediately agreed, eager to please, to restore harmony at any cost. The new Jasmine took a moment to check in with herself, to make sure the invitation felt right, felt healthy. "I'd like that," I said, and was somewhat surprised to find it was true. "Not right away. I'll need time to get settled. But yes, eventually." "We've missed you," my mother said softly. And for the first time in our strained conversations since the dinner, I heard no manipulation in her tone, only a simple truth. "I've missed you too," I replied, equally honest. But I needed this time. I know, she said, and though I doubted she fully understood, the acknowledgement itself felt like progress. After we hung up, I returned to my paint samples with a lighter heart. The boundaries I'd established remained intact. The progress I'd made in valuing myself hadn't been compromised. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was room for a new kind of family relationship to emerge from the ashes of the old one. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. On my terms, with my boundaries respected. A relationship of equals rather than of giver and takers. The journey wasn't over. Family healing rarely follows a neat, linear path. There would be setbacks, old patterns, reasserting themselves, new boundaries to establish. My parents might never fully understand why I'd needed to break away, might never acknowledge the unfairness that had precipitated my decision. But I understood. I acknowledged my worth. And ultimately, that was what mattered most. I selected a soft sage green for my new living room, a warm buttercream for the kitchen, a peaceful blue for the bedroom, colors that spoke of growth, nourishment, tranquility. The palette of my new life, chosen carefully, intentionally, joyfully. Outside, the setting sun cast my apartment in golden light, illuminating the space that had witnessed my transformation. From dutiful daughter to self-assured woman, from family ATM to architect of my own destiny. Tomorrow would bring challenges of its own. The complex dance of family reconciliation, if it happened at all, would require vigilance and strength. My career would continue to demand excellence. Life would throw unexpected obstacles in my path, as it always does. But tonight, surrounded by the symbols of my fresh start, I felt ready for whatever came next. The worst had already happened. I'd disappointed my family, broken the unspoken rules, stepped outside the role I'd been assigned, and I had survived. More than survived, thrived. The realization wasn't prideful, but profoundly peaceful. I had always been the responsible one, the reliable one. Now I was responsible to myself first, reliable in maintaining my own well-being. The strong foundation I'd tried to provide for others now supported me instead, and it felt right. It felt like coming home to myself. As darkness fell outside my window, I raised a glass of wine in a private toast. To boundaries, I whispered. To new beginnings, to becoming my own priority. The townhouse would be ready in 3 months. 3 months to prepare, to plan, to envision the life I would build within those walls. A life of my own making, on my own terms. For the first time, in my adult life, I couldn't wait to see what came next.